In the stillness of a winter night in Chicago, Mary, a Black Christian woman, reflected on the unexpected turns her life had taken. A widow for just over 3 years, she faced the daily struggles of raising her teenage son, Jamal, alone. Working as a nursing assistant, Mary toiled tirelessly to keep her son away from the temptations surrounding their neighborhood. She knew that the influence of the streets was dangerous, especially for young men like Jamal, with little supervision and a deep desire to belong. Despite all the prayers and sermons Mary instilled in their home, she felt Jamal drifting away. Over the past month, she had noticed signs her heart feared interpreting: late outings, unexplained money, and the distant, restless look in his eyes. Jamal, who once attended church with her every Sunday, now withdrew whenever the subject of faith came up. Mary had lost her husband in a tragic workplace accident. Since then, she clung to God to cope with the pain and fear of raising Jamal alone. Amid financial and emotional pressures, her faith was the one unshakable pillar she still had. Every night, she prayed for God to protect her son and give her strength to keep going, as she felt powerless against the dangers drugs posed. One cold morning, while tidying up Jamal's room, Mary found a small packet. Her eyes filled with tears, and a sense of despair overwhelmed her. It confirmed her worst fears. Jamal was involved with drugs. Feeling lost, she knelt in his room and pleaded for divine help. From that moment, Mary decided she couldn't give up on Jamal. He was her only child, the last connection to her family. With newfound determination, she promised herself she would do everything to rescue Jamal from the darkness he was falling into. A mother's love and her faith would be the most powerful weapons she had. In the days following the discovery, Mary struggled to stay calm. She prayed more fervently, but inside, fear grew like a shadow. That same week, she resolved to have a conversation with Jamal. But how? She didn't want to confront him in a way that would push him further away. Instead, she wanted to show him how much she loved him and help him understand the dangers of his choices. Jamal, on the other hand, carried a silent burden. Since his father's death, he had felt an emptiness that never went away. At only 16, he experienced a mix of anger and loss, emotions he didn't know how to express. Without a father figure, and living in a neighborhood where gangs were ever present, he found in them a way to release his confused emotions. One night, while eating dinner in silence, Mary decided to speak. "Jamal, I know you're going through a tough time." She paused, noticing his restless gaze. "I want you to know that no matter what's happening, I'm here for you. You can talk to me about anything, even the difficult things." Jamal avoided his mother's gaze, picking at the remains on his plate. He dreaded disappointing her even more. He knew Mary carried the pain and hopes of a lifetime in each prayer, and he didn't want to add to her suffering. But the streets offered him a different kind of appeal. The friends he spent time with accepted him, giving him a sense of power and respect he found nowhere else. Mary saw the barrier between them. She knew she had to be patient yet firm. That night, after putting her son to bed, she spent hours on her knees, praying. Her faith sustained her, and she believed God would guide her to save Jamal. As time went on, things only got more complicated. Jamal started coming home even later, smelling of alcohol and with red eyes. Mary noticed the subtle changes and suffered in silence, trying not to lose hope. One afternoon, returning from work, she saw a group of teens at the end of the street, including Jamal. They were laughing and holding cigarettes that were clearly not just tobacco. Her heart raced, and she decided she could no longer ignore the situation. That evening, after dinner, she gathered the courage to approach Jamal's room. "Son, we need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Jamal looked at her with impatience, sighing, as he braced for what he assumed would be another sermon. "Mom, I know what you're going to say," he started, rolling his eyes. "But you don't understand. I have to defend myself. I can't be the quiet church boy in a place like this. They respect me." Mary felt the pain in his words, but held herself together. "I understand more than you think, Jamal. I know what you're going through, and how hard it is. But getting involved with drugs won't protect you. It will only destroy you." He shook his head, looking away, resistance etched in his face. But Mary wouldn't give up. She drew a deep breath, and tried a different approach. Something more heartfelt. "Jamal, when your father died, I felt lost too. I thought I wouldn't make it. But my faith, and the love I feel for you, gave me strength. It's just us now, and I won't let anyone take you from me." These words seemed to touch something in Jamal. He fell silent, absorbing what she said. She placed her hand on his shoulder, and added, "You may not understand now, but God is with us. No matter where you go, He will always be by your side. And so will I." That night, Jamal fell asleep with a new heaviness in his heart, torn between the pull of the streets and his mother's words. A part of him still believed, still wanted to do what was right. But he didn't know how to resist the pressure from friends, and the temptation to belong to something bigger, even if it was dangerous. In the following days, Mary continued trying to reach out, trying to understand what she could do to fill the emptiness within Jamal. She spoke to her church pastor, who suggested taking Jamal on a youth retreat with the community. The pastor believed that away from the neighborhood and its influences, Jamal might open up and reconnect with himself and his faith. Mary knew it would be hard to convince him, but she decided to try. She prepared everything, and one Friday, she asked her son to give her a chance and spend the weekend with her and the church group. "It will be a break for you to think. I just want you to have a chance to see things differently. If you want to go back to your regular life afterward, I won't force you. Just give me this chance," she said, with a calm that surprised Jamal. Surprisingly, he agreed, reluctant but curious. In his mind, he thought maybe he could understand more about his mother's faith and, perhaps, discover what he had been missing. The retreat would become a turning point, even though he didn't realize it yet. The sky was cloudy when Mary and Jamal arrived at the retreat location. It was a simple camp, surrounded by tall trees, with a view that stretched over distant hills. Jamal looked around, still wary, wondering what he was doing there. He felt out of place, uncomfortable with the environment, and the people around him who seemed so different from him. Mary watched him with affection, but also with a hint of anxiety. She knew she had to give him space to experience the weekend for himself, so she decided to let him be, without putting any pressure on him. Soon, the other young people began to approach to introduce themselves. There was a mix of people from different ages and backgrounds, and, to his surprise, Jamal noticed that some of them also had troubled pasts. During an introductory activity, a young man named Lucas shared that he had distanced himself from gangs and violence to find a new purpose in life. He spoke with a sincerity that struck Jamal, although he kept his expression guarded. On the first day, the group participated in several outdoor activities and group discussions. Initially quiet, Jamal tried to keep himself isolated, but during a discussion circle about identity and purpose, something began to stir within him. The teenagers shared stories of their fears, dreams, and the pressures they faced. With each story, Jamal saw a reflection of himself. He realized that many of them were also dealing with family conflicts, loss, and financial challenges, just like him. Gradually, he felt a timid desire to open up as well, but he wasn't ready yet. That night, the group was invited to a candlelight meditation and reflection session. Mary, sitting in the back, watched her son with a tight heart, praying that he would find some relief for his pain. The pastor led the meditation, asking everyone to think about a difficult moment they wished to overcome. Jamal closed his eyes, but an image of his father appeared in his mind. He remembered the accident, the sirens, the helpless feeling, and the coldness he felt upon receiving the news. He had never mourned his father's death. He had locked that pain away in a dark corner of his heart, where emotions had turned into an unbearable weight. That feeling of loss had grown into anger, leading him to make destructive choices. After the meditation, the pastor invited anyone who wanted to share their thoughts. Jamal remained silent, but his expression revealed a whirlwind of emotions. The pastor noticed Jamal's distant gaze and approached him for a brief conversation. "Jamal, you seem to be carrying a heavy burden. I know it might not be easy, but know that here, we're all willing to listen whenever you're ready." Those words lingered in Jamal's mind. No one had ever spoken to him with such empathy. He was used to judgment and looks of suspicion, but here was someone offering only understanding. Deep down, he felt a flicker of hope ignite. The next morning, the group went for a hike along the camp's trails. Jamal followed in silence, observing the other teens, laughing and talking. For a moment, he felt an odd comfort, being far from the streets, from the constant tension, and the choices he had to make to survive. Here, he could just be a kid. Lucas, the young man who had shared his story in the discussion circle, approached Jamal during the hike. "Hey man, I noticed you don't talk much, but I get it. When I came here for the first time, I didn't want to be here either. Thought it was a waste of time, you know?" Jamal let out a short laugh, surprised at how well Lucas could read his state of mind. "Really? And what made you change your mind?" Jamal asked, almost without realizing he was curious for an answer. "I think it was realizing that, despite everything, I still had choices. For a long time, I thought my only option was to take what the streets offered. But here, I saw other people who had been through the same and managed to get out of it. They showed me that I could find my worth in something else, you know." Jamal remained silent, absorbing Lucas's words. This guy seemed to have come from a similar path, yet he had found a way to change. It made Jamal think that maybe, just maybe, he could choose a different path too. That night, there was a praise and testimony session. Mary watched Jamal from a distance, relieved to see him relax a little. In the middle of the service, she noticed he seemed more at ease, even moved, as the pastor spoke about the power of forgiveness and redemption. Jamal felt the weight of his choices, but also a desire to start over, not to be defined solely by the mistakes he had made. In a moment of silence, he was surprised to feel tears rolling down his face. It was the grief he had never allowed himself. It was the pain for his father, the anger he felt toward the world, but also the love that still remained in his heart. Mary, seeing her son so vulnerable, let her own tears fall. She knew this was the beginning of a new chance for Jamal. That night, before going to sleep, Jamal approached his mother and whispered, "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." Mary smiled, feeling the answer to all her prayers. After the weekend at the retreat, Jamal and Mary returned home with a faint sense of hope. Jamal felt different, almost lighter, as if a shadow that had followed him for years was finally beginning to fade. However, he knew his battle was just beginning. During the retreat, he had been surrounded by support and people who understood him, but returning to the neighborhood meant confronting the same reality that had pulled him toward drugs. In the following days, Jamal tried to stay busy with school and spent more time at home, doing his best to avoid his old friends and the places where he knew temptation waited. Mary was radiant, feeling that her son had finally taken the first step toward transformation. She encouraged him to get involved in church activities, to read more, and to focus on his studies. Jamal accepted, trying to follow the new path his mother had dreamed for him. But change wouldn't be easy. One rainy afternoon, while heading home, Jamal heard his name called from across the street. It was Rico, one of the boys he used to hang out with. Rico called to him with a mocking expression, as if he knew exactly what Jamal had tried to do by distancing himself. So, Jamal, now you're acting like a saint, going to pretend you're too good for us, Rico taunted, with eyes full of contempt. Jamal hesitated, feeling a mix of fear and shame. He didn't want to seem weak, nor did he want to provoke the anger of his old friends. He knew how dangerous that could be, especially in his neighborhood, but he also didn't want to go back to that life. Jamal took a deep breath and tried to respond in a friendly way. It's not like that, Rico. I'm just trying to focus on other things now. My mom, you know how she is. Rico watched him with a cynical smile. I know, but you can't just walk away like that. You're one of us, Jamal. Always have been. Are you really going to ditch us? Jamal felt the pressure mounting. He knew that for many of the kids there, leaving that circle of friends was seen as betrayal. Rico and the others considered him one of them, and any attempt to escape could bring dangerous consequences. In the following days, Rico's taunts continued, and Jamal noticed that he was starting to attract suspicious and even hostile looks from some boys in the neighborhood. One night, while walking back from church, he was surrounded by a group of teenagers he knew well. They pressured him, questioning why he was distancing himself, and, with a threatening tone, suggested he wouldn't easily forget where he came from. Their words weighed on Jamal. In a way, he felt a responsibility, as if he had to honor the loyalty of those who had been with him since before. But at the same time, he wanted to find a different meaning for his life, something that wouldn't lead to the tragic fate that many in the neighborhood faced. The internal and external pressure became unbearable, and for a moment, he thought about giving it all up. The ease of drugs and the sense of belonging in the gangs seemed like a tempting escape from the struggle he faced every day. Feeling suffocated, Jamal left home one night, wandering aimlessly to clear his head. Mary, worried about his behavior, tried to convince him to talk, but he was distant and restless. He roamed the streets, where old habits and temptations awaited him. He thought about seeking out some of his friends, feeling torn between his mother's words and the dangerous allure of the streets. Finally, he found himself in a familiar alley, where many young people gathered to escape reality. There, he met some of his old companions, who welcomed him with laughter and some jabs about his recent religious phase. They offered him drugs and alcohol, mocking his attempt to change. "Come on, Saint Boy, show us you're still one of us," one of them teased, holding out a joint with a strong, intoxicating smell. Jamal looked at the joint and felt a storm of emotions. He knew what it would mean to take it. He knew it was a step back into the abyss, but the pressure and fear of rejection were overwhelming. He reached out to grab it, hesitating, as the voices laughed around him. But in a moment of clarity, he remembered his mother's face, the tears he had seen in her eyes, and all the nights she spent praying for him. It was as if his mother was there at that moment, watching and waiting for his choice. With almost superhuman effort, Jamal let go of the joint and, with a voice firmer than he imagined he had, said, "No, I'm not doing this, and you don't know me anymore." He turned away and walked out, ignoring the shouts and laughter behind him. He felt shaken, but also victorious. It was a small victory, but a victory. That night, upon returning home, he found Mary still awake, waiting for him, with a worried look. "Jamal, is everything okay?" she asked, softly. He simply nodded, with tears in his eyes, and hugged her tightly, in silence. He knew the road would be long and difficult, but for the first time, he felt he had the strength to fight. And Mary, feeling the sincerity of that embrace, realized that her son was genuinely trying, in a way she had only dreamed of. After that decisive moment, Jamal felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The choice to resist the pressures of the streets brought a sense of achievement, but he knew it also put him at risk. Chicago's streets could be unforgiving, and now he felt even more isolated. Every corner he turned seemed to carry suspicious looks and murmurs about his betrayal. Mary, on the other hand, noticed the changes in her son. Despite the difficulties, he seemed more focused and dedicated to staying away from his old lifestyle. She encouraged him to keep participating in church activities, believing that a supportive environment would help him stay strong. With her heart renewed by hope, Mary began looking for opportunities for Jamal outside the neighborhood, such as social and sports programs for teenagers. She was willing to make any sacrifice to ensure her son had the chance to change. However, the pressure Jamal felt only increased. One day, while returning from school, he was confronted by Rico and two other teenagers. They cornered him in a narrow street with threatening looks. "So, Jamal, decided you're a saint now, huh?" Rico said sarcastically, circling him. "Think you can just walk away from all this, just like that?" Jamal tried to stay calm, but his heart was pounding. He knew that any misstep could pull him back to the life he was trying to avoid. Rico and the others were old friends, and he still remembered the camaraderie they had shared. But now, the situation was different. Jamal realized that, to them, his change of attitude was a sign of weakness and betrayal, something they couldn't easily forgive. "Look, I don't want any trouble," Jamal said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm just trying to live my life, your life," Rico replied, laughing menacingly. "You're one of us, Jamal, always have been. You don't just turn your back on family." Rico grabbed Jamal by the shoulder, looking him straight in the eye. Jamal felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew that if he gave in at that moment, all the struggle he had waged against drugs and street life would be in vain. He took a deep breath, raised his head, and responded firmly. "This isn't family, Rico. If it were, you'd understand that I need a new chance. But I don't expect you to understand. I just want to be out of this." Those words took the others by surprise. They expected Jamal to back down, but he was determined. Facing Jamal's resistance, Rico let go of his shoulder with a look of disdain. "I'm not going to protect you anymore, Jamal. Don't come crying if things get ugly." Jamal simply nodded, knowing that this was a point of no return. He turned and walked away, feeling the weight of his choice, but also a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in a long time. That night, he talked to his mother. He told her what had happened, admitting the fear he still felt. Mary hugged him tenderly, shedding tears of gratitude for the progress he was making, even amidst the challenges. She knew the struggle was huge, but she was determined to give her son all the strength and support he needed. The following week, Mary managed to enroll Jamal in a youth sports program in Chicago, aimed at keeping teenagers away from violence and drugs. Jamal began attending regularly, finding a welcoming and challenging environment. There, he met other young people who, like him, were struggling to rebuild their lives. Among them, he befriended Daniel, a boy who had also distanced himself from gangs and was trying to find his way through sports. Daniel was a motivated young man, always encouraging others to stay focused. He became a source of inspiration for Jamal, showing him that it was possible to walk a different path. During practices, they would talk about the challenges of staying away from the streets, and over time, Jamal started sharing his own experiences and fears. "You know, Daniel, sometimes I wonder if I'll be able to handle this pressure forever," Jamal admitted after a long practice. Daniel looked at him with understanding and replied sincerely, "Man, no one said it would be easy. But every day you choose to stay away from that world, you prove that you're stronger than you think. I went through this too, and I still have tough days. But look at us, we're here, and we have a chance that many don't." Those words strengthened Jamal. He knew he would have to fight daily against the influences and memories of the past, But now he felt he wasn't alone. The training sessions helped him release the tension, and his friendship with Daniel provided valuable support for his journey. Mary, observing Jamal's progress, felt more hopeful than ever. However, she also knew that they would still need a lot of faith and perseverance to protect her son. She continued her prayers, asking God to keep Jamal away from the temptations and dangers that still surrounded his life. One night, while praying, Mary reflected on how much further they still had to go, but with a smile on her face and tears of relief, she thanked God for each small step Jamal took toward a better life. As the months went by, Jamal began to find a healthier and more balanced routine. Between practices, church activities, and school, he worked hard to build a new life away from the dangerous influences of the neighborhood. However, the distance from old friends and the old choices required him to maintain constant emotional control, especially because the temptations remained close by. Jamal still lived in the same neighborhood, with the same pressures and dangers at every corner. Mary, noticing her son's evolution, doubled her efforts to keep him focused. She celebrated his small victories, like each day he stayed away from his old habits, each practice he completed, and each activity that helped him grow stronger. But she knew the struggle was ongoing. Her faith remained unshakable, and Mary began gathering a prayer group at home, asking for protection not only for Jamal, but also for other young people in the community. A new test soon emerged. One rainy afternoon, as Jamal walked home from practice, a car drove slowly by him with its windows down. He immediately recognized the voices inside. It was some of the same boys he used to hang out with, and among them was Rico. The car stopped abruptly, and Rico stepped out, leaning against the door while watching him with a calculated smile. "What's up, Jamal? Been keeping low, huh? Heard you're trying to change your life," Rico said, with a tone mixing disdain and provocation. Jamal looked at Rico with determination, trying to contain his nerves. He felt at a disadvantage, but he didn't want to show weakness. "Yeah, I'm trying to do things differently now," he replied, keeping his tone calm. Rico laughed, but there was something dark in his gaze. "You think it's that easy, turning your back on all of this and moving on? Many have tried before you, and they end up coming back. Once you're in, there's no real way out." Rico's words weighed on Jamal. He knew many young people who had tried to leave the street life only to fall back, whether due to pressure from friends or a lack of options. He knew a relapse was a real possibility, and feared what it might mean for both his mother and himself. When he got home, Mary immediately sensed something was wrong. Jamal was silent, deep in thought, and she decided to give him space, letting him feel comfortable enough to open up. That night, after some time in silence, Jamal finally spoke with her. "Mom, sometimes I don't know if I'll make it. They won't leave me alone. I feel like they're always watching, waiting for me to slip. It's like I have a target on my back." Mary, feeling her son's pain, sat beside him and held his hands. "Jamal, I know it's hard, but you're stronger than you think, and you're not alone. Every decision you make is a step toward a different life. I pray for you every day, and I know God is with you, guiding and protecting you." She hugged him, feeling the tension and fear he carried. Jamal knew his mother was his safe harbor, and in that embrace, he found the strength to keep going. However, he also knew he would need much more to remain steadfast. In the days that followed, the situation worsened. Jamal realized he was being watched, and that his old group seemed determined not to leave him in peace. Rico and his friends followed him, making subtle threats, leaving disturbing messages on social media, and occasionally intimidating him in person. The pressure began to weigh on him, affecting even his performance at school and in practice. Daniel, his new friend from the sports program, noticed Jamal's change and decided to approach him to understand what was going on. "Jamal, you seem different these days. Did something happen?" Daniel asked, with a concerned look. Jamal hesitated, but decided to trust Daniel, telling him about the threats and the difficulty he faced in trying to escape his past. "I feel like they're everywhere, watching me. It's like they're waiting for any slip-up to pull me back," he admitted, sounding tense. Daniel listened attentively and, with a look of understanding, placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Jamal, I went through this too. When you decide to change, many people will test you, wanting to prove you're still the same. But each time you resist, you show them and yourself that you're stronger. It's a daily battle, but you don't have to face it alone." These words encouraged Jamal, who found in Daniel a true friend and ally. He realized he needed to build a stronger support network to deal with the challenges. He sought more guidance from the pastor at church and began participating in activities with other young people who, like him, were trying to leave behind a troubled life. Mary, aware of the pressure her son was under, decided to seek extra help. She contacted a local organization that provided support for at-risk families, and through this, she found new resources to help Jamal stay focused and protected. Despite these efforts, Jamal still faced moments of doubt, but now, with the support of his mother, Daniel, and the church, he felt increasingly strengthened to resist. He knew the road would be long and full of obstacles, but his faith and his mother's love guided him, and each day, he realized he was building not only a new life, but also a purpose. In the months that followed, Jamal managed to stay firm in his goal, though the constant pressure to return to his old group drained him emotionally. The weight of the threats and social isolation left him tired and vulnerable, and Mary, noticing this, intensified her support, trying to make her son feel that he was not alone. She celebrated each of his achievements, keeping faith that over time, Jamal would be able to overcome all adversities. One rainy afternoon, after a long practice, Jamal was exhausted and anxious. He couldn't quite explain why, but a sense of unease was growing inside him. The new life he was trying to build felt like it required more effort than he feared he could sustain. As he was preparing to leave, he received an unexpected call from Rico. "We need to talk, Jamal. It's serious," Rico said, with an unusual urgency in his voice. Despite his mistrust, Jamal felt compelled to hear what his old friend had to say. He met Rico in a nearby park, keeping a safe distance and a calm posture. Rico looked tense, and to Jamal's surprise, his face showed something different from his usual sarcasm or disdain. There was a tension, almost a hint of vulnerability, that Jamal had never seen. "Look, I know you think we just want to pull you down," Rico began, avoiding direct eye contact, "but you know how hard it is here, right? I just don't want you thinking you can leave us behind and expect everything to be okay. The neighborhood is like this, man. And if you choose another path, you put us at risk too." Jamal listened in silence, feeling a pang of empathy for Rico. He knew well the harsh reality of where they lived, and understood how much loyalty and camaraderie meant for survival in such a violent and neglected environment. For Rico, loyalty was a matter of survival, and Jamal's change felt like a threat that he didn't know how to handle. "I understand what you're saying, Rico. But I'm trying to get out of this cycle. You know, each of us deserves a chance. I don't want anyone left behind, not even you. But I can't keep living that life," Jamal responded, with a tone both firm and understanding. Rico looked away, without replying. Jamal realized that his friend was struggling with his own inner conflicts, perhaps more than he had ever imagined. Before partying, Rico threw out a final line: "Just be careful, Jamal. Sometimes, it's not a choice. That's just how things are." Those words echoed in Jamal's mind as he returned home, more confused than ever. He wanted to stay strong in his path toward change, but he also knew there were consequences for those who tried to leave the cycle of violence and drugs. The constant threat hung over him, and he was haunted by the idea of relapsing and disappointing his mother and himself. That evening, as he sat down to dinner with his mother, Mary noticed the dark cloud hanging over him. Determined to offer her son some relief, she proposed a prayer before the meal, asking for strength and protection for them both. Jamal felt strengthened by his mother's faith, and while she prayed, he began to realize something that brought him peace. He wasn't alone. Mary was with him, and he had the support of the pastor, Daniel, and the community. In the days that followed, Jamal became more involved in the sports program and church meetings. With encouragement from Daniel and the other young people, he began to dream of the possibility of a different future, far from the cycle of violence that had surrounded him. Meanwhile, Mary spoke with the pastor and some people from the church, who organized a vigil to pray for all the young people in danger in the neighborhood. Jamal was one of the first to commit to the idea, and the event created a sense of unity and support he had never experienced before. However, the situation took an unexpected turn. One night, while returning from a church gathering, Jamal was approached by two unknown boys, who cornered him on a dark street. They looked threatening, and Jamal quickly realized the situation was serious. One of the boys said, in a cold tone, "We heard you're acting like you're better than everyone else. Jamal, guess we need to teach a lesson to those who forget their roots." Before he could react, they shoved him against the wall. Jamal tried to defend himself, but he was outnumbered. They threatened him, hinting that if he continued this holy life, his mother might pay the price. The threat shook Jamal deeply. He knew this was more than mere intimidation. It was a clear warning that he wasn't safe. When he returned home, shaken and hurt, Mary was horrified to see his condition. She embraced him, crying in silence, unsure of what to say to comfort him. "Mom, I don't know if I can keep doing this. They're not going to leave me alone, and I don't want you to suffer because of me. Maybe, I should just give up," Jamal said, his voice filled with fear and sadness. Mary, feeling her son's pain and exhaustion, wiped away her tears and looked him straight in the eye with a nearly supernatural strength. "Jamal, I know what you're going through is difficult, but God didn't bring us this far to abandon us. I know you're strong, and you have a greater purpose. We're going to face this together, my son. I won't let you give up." Mary's words reignited Jamal's determination. He knew his mother had sacrificed so much for him, and this gave him the strength to continue. He promised himself that he wouldn't give in, that he would fight for his future, no matter what it took. In the following days, Jamal intensified his involvement with the community, joining church activities and the sports program more than ever. Meanwhile, Mary sought ways to keep him safe. She continued to support him, but the threats and constant vigilance weighed on him emotionally. Each day, he felt the strength of his faith and his mother's love guiding him, and he realized that every decision he made was one more step toward freedom. After that night, Jamal realized that true transformation was about more than just distancing himself from his past. It was about using his journey to inspire others. His journey wasn't just about escaping the dangers of the streets, but about showing that change was possible even under the harshest circumstances. With Mary's unwavering love and his growing faith, Jamal knew he could persevere and live a life of purpose, honor, and peace. Despite Jamal's courage and faith, the constant threats and state of alert began to take a toll on his emotional and physical health. He could barely sleep, waking at every noise outside, fearing that his old friends would finally carry out their threats. Even with Mary's support, the pastor's guidance, and Daniel's friendship, Jamal felt like he was trapped, as if his life was teetering on the edge of chaos. Mary, aware of her son's exhaustion, became even more protective. She started accompanying him to church activities whenever possible, and picked him up after practice, afraid he might face another confrontation or attack. However, her increased vigilance only added to Jamal's anxiety, who felt his freedom slipping away, as if he were living in an invisible prison. One night, after a long conversation with the pastor, Mary had a risky idea. She spoke to Jamal about the possibility of moving to another neighborhood, somewhere he could start fresh, away from the constant pressure of his old friends and the stigma of being the boy who betrayed the group. It was a drastic change, and Jamal knew it would mean another sacrifice for his mother, who was already struggling to keep up with their daily expenses. "Mom, I don't want you to sacrifice even more for me. I know you're already doing everything you can. Maybe I just need to be stronger here," he said seriously, though with uncertainty in his voice. But Mary was determined. She knew her son's well-being was the most important thing. If she had to face new financial challenges to ensure Jamal's safety, she would do so without hesitation. "Jamal, this isn't about sacrifice. It's about your future. I'd do anything to see you safe, living the life you deserve. God brought us this far, and I believe He will continue to guide us to the right path." With that, Mary began looking into options for a possible move. She reached out to the pastor, who contacted other churches and organizations, trying to find a network of support that could offer them a safer alternative. Meanwhile, Jamal continued to attend practices and help with community events, but the tension only grew. Rico and the others didn't seem willing to leave him alone. One afternoon, as Jamal was leaving practice, he spotted Rico watching him from a distance with a threatening look. The feeling of always being watched became suffocating, and he felt as though he was constantly being hunted. The breaking point came a few days later, when Jamal returned from school and found a threatening message graffitied on the wall beside his house. "Nobody escapes forever." The message was clear and chilling, and Mary's reaction was immediate. She hugged Jamal, tears streaming down her face, and began praying out loud, asking for protection for them both. The fear was real, but Mary was determined to keep her faith strong and protect her son. At that moment, Jamal started seriously considering the idea of leaving the neighborhood. He knew this would mean leaving behind everything he was familiar with, including the church and the sports program, where he had found support and friends. But the choice was clear. Either he left, or he risked being pulled back into the cycle of violence and destruction he was trying to escape. Not long after, an unexpected opportunity arose. The church pastor managed to contact a youth support center in another town a few hours away. This center offered scholarships and support programs for at-risk teens, and could help Jamal secure an educational path and the opportunity to pursue his dreams in a safe environment. When the pastor shared the news, Jamal and Mary were both stunned. This was a real chance to start over and build a future free from the shadows that still haunted him. But the decision was difficult. Moving away would mean leaving his mother and the life he had known to embark on a new journey alone. Jamal felt torn between the desire for safety and the fear of leaving his mother behind. "Son, this is your chance. God opened this door for you, and I believe it's for the best. I'll be here, always praying and waiting for you," Mary said, trying to stay calm, though her heart ached. That night, Jamal spent hours in prayer and reflection, searching for the strength to make a choice. He knew the new path would be hard, but he also knew it might be his only chance to escape the dangerous influences of his past. At dawn, he finally made his decision. When he told Mary he had decided to accept the opportunity at the youth center, they embraced with tears in their eyes, both aware that this was a major step for them. It was a temporary goodbye, but it marked the start of a new chapter for Jamal, a chapter where he could rebuild his identity and leave behind the weight of the past. In the days leading up to his departure, they prepared everything for the move, and Mary devoted herself to advising him on how to handle the distance and the challenges he might face. She encouraged him to keep his faith and remember that, even though they were apart, they would always be connected by love and prayer. On the day of his departure, Mary and Jamal said goodbye at the bus station. He held her hands, promising to return as a stronger, better man. She smiled, tears in her eyes, and said, "Jamal, you've always been a fighter. Go and show the world the incredible man you are." As he boarded the bus, Jamal looked back to see his mother waving, proud and emotional. He knew the journey would be tough, but he also knew he was prepared to face whatever lay ahead, supported by the faith, strength, and love Mary had always given him. When Jamal stepped off the bus, he took in the new surroundings. This town was much smaller than Chicago, quiet and lined with trees and open fields. The youth center was located on the outskirts, surrounded by greenery, and offering a peaceful, safe environment, just the place he needed to focus on his future, without the pressures of his old life. Upon arrival, Jamal was welcomed by the center's coordinators, who gave him a tour and explained how the program worked. He would follow a structured routine, with classes, sports activities, and regular therapy sessions, both individual and group. At first, the idea of discussing his feelings with strangers made him uncomfortable, but he knew that embracing these changes was a necessary step toward recovery. During the first week, Jamal felt out of place, homesick, and occasionally questioned whether he had made the right choice. He missed Mary deeply, their prayers together, the comfort of her presence, and the security of knowing she was nearby. Although he still spoke with her daily and was comforted by her words, the distance created an ache in his heart. In the quiet moments of the night, he thought back to the struggles they'd faced together, and he wondered how she was managing alone. Over time, however, Jamal started to make new connections. One of the first young people he got close to was Malik, a boy a few years older, who was also there to rebuild his life after a difficult past. Malik was outgoing and empathetic, quick to encourage others. He had faced similar struggles, and now helped newcomers adjust to the center. Malik and Jamal quickly became friends, sharing interests, and motivating each other as they navigated their new paths. "You know, Jamal, I've been where you are, feeling lost, like everyone's watching you, waiting for you to mess up," Malik told him one day, as they walked along a trail near the center. "But I figured out that, despite everything, I still had choices. Each day, I make a choice to be better, even if it's tough." Malik's words resonated with Jamal. Slowly, he opened up in the therapy sessions, where he began to unpack his pain, fears, and hopes for the future. He spoke about the anger he'd carried since his father's death, the guilt he felt toward his mother, and the memories of a neighborhood that had shaped him in ways he struggled to escape. Meanwhile, Mary stayed in regular contact with him, sharing small news from the neighborhood and reminding him of the people praying for his success. Each call strengthened Jamal's resolve, and he felt as though her faith and love were still his guiding lights, even from a distance. In time, Jamal began to excel at the youth center. He threw himself into sports competitions and academic study groups, working hard to make the most of every opportunity. His dedication caught the attention of the coordinators, who saw in him a young man with tremendous potential. One of the center's counselors, Mr. Williams, a mentor for many of the residents, noticed Jamal's progress and scheduled a one-on-one meeting with him. After congratulating Jamal on his efforts, Mr. Williams made a surprising proposal. "Jamal, we're all proud of what you've achieved so far. You're a role model to many here, and we believe you have even more potential. I'd like to recommend you for a sports scholarship at a preparatory school. It's a chance to keep studying, and who knows, it might even lead to a college scholarship." Jamal was speechless. The idea of further education and athletics was something he had never even dreamed of. Mr. Williams encouraged him to think carefully and discuss it with Mary. When he called her that night, she was thrilled, and with pride in her voice. She urged him to pursue the opportunity. "Jamal, God is opening doors for you. I believe this is your path. Follow your heart, and know that I'll always be here cheering you on," she said. From that moment on, Jamal committed himself even more to his goals. With Malik's friendship and the encouragement of his counselors, he focused on sports and academics with dedication, understanding that every step brought him closer to the life his mother had dreamed of for him. However, the journey was still challenging. In one therapy session, Jamal confronted painful memories of his old neighborhood, especially the fear and pressure that had almost driven him back to his old ways. But he also realized that his struggles were shared by many others at the center. Malik, who was present in the session, reminded him of a powerful truth. Our past brought us here, but it doesn't define who we are. Every day we make a new choice. These words stayed with Jamal, reinforcing his belief that he was capable of true change. With each choice he made, he felt himself moving closer to a life filled with purpose and peace, one step at a time. Months passed, and Jamal continued to grow stronger. His commitment and positive influence at the center caught the attention of more mentors, who began to see him as a leader among the other young people. He knew the journey would be long, but with his mother's love and the support of his new friends, he finally believed that he had a chance to achieve his dreams. One day, he received the long-awaited news of his scholarship. It was his ticket to pursue his studies and continue building the life he had always hoped for. As he and Mary celebrated together over the phone, he thanked her for all her sacrifices and for her unwavering faith in him. Mary, overjoyed, reminded him of how far he had come, saying, "Jamal, I always knew you had a warrior's spirit. Keep going, and know that every step forward is an answer to my prayers." As Jamal prepared to leave for his new school, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. His past might have shaped him, but it no longer defined him. With each choice he made, he honored his mother's love, his own strength, and his faith in a brighter future. As he set off for his new life, Jamal knew that he was no longer the boy fighting alone in Chicago, but a young man guided by faith, love, and the belief that every day offered a new beginning. In the months that followed, Jamal embraced his new life with a determination he hadn't known he possessed. At the preparatory school, he quickly became known for his dedication on the field and in the classroom. Despite the challenges, Jamal applied himself fully, driven by the promise he'd made to his mother, and the desire to honor the sacrifices she had made for him. Every victory, no matter how small, felt like another step toward fulfilling his dream of creating a life beyond the streets of his old neighborhood. Mary remained his steadfast supporter. They spoke often, and each call was filled with love, encouragement, and updates on the neighborhood and the church community. Knowing his mother was proud of him motivated Jamal to keep going, even on the days when he felt overwhelmed by the pressure of school and sports. The preparatory school offered Jamal a new perspective on life. He was surrounded by people from various backgrounds, many of whom had dreams and goals as big as his own. He made friends who shared his commitment to self-improvement, and he felt himself growing both mentally and emotionally. Jamal learned new things about himself every day, gaining confidence and a sense of purpose that had once felt out of reach. However, reminders of his past continued to surface. Despite the distance, he sometimes felt the weight of his old life following him, as if it could resurface at any moment. Memories of the streets, of Rico, and the pressure he had left behind lingered in his mind. On nights when he found it hard to sleep, Jamal would close his eyes and remember Mary's voice, her unwavering faith, and the promise he'd made to build a better life for himself. One day, during a routine practice, Jamal caught the attention of a college recruiter who was impressed by his athletic ability and work ethic. This chance encounter led to an invitation for him to visit a university known for both its academic and athletic programs. The offer was more than he had ever imagined possible. If accepted, he would have the opportunity to attend college on a full scholarship, an achievement he had never dared to dream of. The news filled Jamal with a sense of accomplishment, and he immediately called Mary to share his excitement. "Mom, they want me to come visit the university. They're talking about a full scholarship," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Mary was overjoyed, and tears filled her eyes. She knew how far Jamal had come, and how much he had fought for this moment. "Jamal, God is guiding your steps. I am so proud of you. Remember, this is just the beginning. Keep your faith, and let your light shine. You have worked so hard, and you deserve every blessing coming your way." The visit to the university was everything Jamal had hoped for, and more. He was welcomed warmly, given a tour of the campus, and introduced to the coaching staff and academic advisors, who would support him if he chose to attend. By the end of the day, he could hardly believe that this was his life now, a life so different from the one he had left behind. Back at the preparatory school, Jamal continued to focus on his goals, and within weeks, he received the official scholarship offer from the university. It was a life-changing opportunity, and with Mary's blessing, he accepted. The moment was bittersweet. While he was excited about the future, he felt a pang of sadness, leaving behind the preparatory school and the friends he had made there. At college, Jamal faced new challenges, but his experiences had taught him resilience. The pressures of college athletics and academics were intense, but he embraced them, knowing that each struggle was part of a journey he had chosen. He continued to attend church, finding solace in his faith, and often called Mary to share his progress and seek her advice. As time went on, Jamal became a source of inspiration for others. His story reached the ears of younger students, and even some of his professors, who were moved by his determination and the obstacles he had overcome. He began volunteering at local youth centers, sharing his story with teenagers facing difficult situations. Jamal wanted to give back, to show other young people that change was possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Back in Chicago, Mary continued her work with the church, organizing prayer groups for young people and families in need of support. She often shared Jamal's story, encouraging parents not to give up on their children. She was proud to see how her son had grown into a man of faith, compassion, and strength, embodying the values she had instilled in him. On one of his breaks, Jamal returned home to visit Mary. They shared a heartfelt reunion, filled with joy, gratitude, and the quiet understanding of everything they had endured together. As they prayed together that night, Mary thanked God for every blessing, for each struggle that had strengthened their bond, and for the journey that had brought them to this moment. With his mother's blessing and his own unwavering resolve, Jamal continued on his path, determined to live a life of purpose, and to honor the faith and love that had saved him. His story became a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of a mother's love, and the belief that, no matter where you come from, you can choose to create a better future. And that was the story of Jamal and Mary, an example of faith, love, and overcoming. If you also believe that everyone deserves a second chance, share this story and inspire someone who needs support. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage and transformation. And remember, no matter how difficult the journey, faith and love have the power to change any destination.